What do a fighter plane battling in the sky and a tank racing through mud under enemy fire have in common? At first glance, nothing. But the British once decided that if an aircraft engine delivered incredible performance in the air, why not try using it on the ground? That decision changed the history of three famous machines at once: Cromwell, Comet, and Centurion. Today, we'll look at how the brilliant idea of combining sky and earth was born in the middle of World War II, and why it became one of the most successful innovations in British military engineering. At the beginning of World War II, British tanks had a serious problem. They often lacked speed, reliability, and power. Most early models, such as Matilda or Valentine, were well protected but slow and difficult to handle. They frequently broke down in field conditions, overheated, or simply could not keep up with the pace of modern mechanized warfare. German Panzer III and Panzer IV had already shown that a tank needed to be more than an armored fortress. It had to be a fast hunter as well. Meanwhile, the war was proving a simple truth. Survival belonged to whoever moved faster, maneuvered better, and seized the better position first. Britain needed a tank that did not crawl across the battlefield, but practically flew forward, flanking the enemy, suddenly appearing behind their lines and vanishing before the opponent could aim. The old approach of focusing only on armor and guns no longer worked. A revolution in mobility was needed. And at that critical moment, when Britain was fighting for survival, engineers began looking for solutions where no one expected: in the aviation industry. At the same time, British aviation already had a true technical star: the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. It powered the Supermarine Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane as they defended the skies over Britain during the Battle of Britain in 1940. The Merlin was a powerful, proven, modern engine, a 1,648 cubic inch V12 liquid-cooled motor producing more than 1,000 horsepower and capable of running at high RPM for hours. Pilots loved it for its reliability and power reserve, which allowed them to maneuver in dogfights with remarkable ease. Then engineers asked a bold question: what if they took its foundation and transplanted it into a tank? If this engine worked so effectively under the extreme conditions of the sky, high speed, temperature changes, constant stress, why not adapt it for the ground? It was risky, but Britain could not afford to wait. War demanded bold experiments, and Rolls-Royce took on the challenge. Of course, you could not simply drop an aircraft engine into an armored vehicle unchanged. The Merlin was tuned for flight, where constant airflow, aided cooling, and vibrations were lower. So Rolls-Royce created a special ground version called the Rolls-Royce Meteor. They removed unnecessary aviation components, such as the high-altitude supercharger, adapted the cooling system for ground use, strengthened the crankcase, and changed the gearing to drive tracks instead of a propeller. Most importantly, the Meteor kept enormous power and reliability. Over 600 horsepower in the basic version, and even more later. It was compact, relatively light for its output, and incredibly durable. That is how one of the best tank engines of its era was born. When Cromwell received the Meteor, the British finally saw a tank that met the demands of modern war. The Cromwell had originally been forced to use weaker engines, but the Meteor changed everything. A vehicle weighing about 28 tons could reach around 40 miles per hour on roads. Fantastic speed for a tank of the 1940s. It could sharply change direction, quickly outflank enemies, cross rivers, and overcome obstacles where other vehicles became stuck. In battles in Normandy and the later advance into Europe, the Cromwell became a symbol of British speed. The Meteor allowed it to become one of the first truly fast Allied cruiser tanks capable of competing with the German Panther in battlefield mobility. Then came the Comet, a further development of the idea where speed was combined with firepower. The Comet was essentially an evolution of the Cromwell, but with stronger armor and, most importantly, a powerful 3-inch gun capable of penetrating German armor at longer ranges. It kept all the advantages of the Meteor engine: the same impressive mobility, quick acceleration, and stability over rough terrain. The Comet weighed about 33 tons, yet thanks to an engine producing more than 600 horsepower, it could still reach 31 to 34 miles per hour. This was now a tank capable not only of moving fast, but also of confidently fighting the most dangerous late-war German machines, the Tiger and Panther. In battles along the Rhine and in the Ardennes, the Comet proved that British armored forces had finally achieved a balance of speed, protection, and firepower. After the war, Britain created the Centurion, a machine many historians consider one of the best tanks of the 20th century. It too received an engine from the same aviation family, an improved Meteor. The Centurion weighed over 50 tons, had thick armor, and mounted a 17-pounder gun at first, later replaced by a 20-pounder, yet thanks to its powerful engine it retained excellent mobility, up to 22 to 25 miles per hour on roads and strong cross-country performance. That meant a heavy tank with real mobility, allowing it to remain relevant for decades and fight across the world, from Korea to the Middle East. The Centurion served in dozens of conflicts, was constantly upgraded, and even became the basis for Israeli tank developments. The Meteor allowed it to endure extreme desert, mountain, and swamp conditions where other machines lost power. These tanks had such a strong power reserve that they could handle numerous upgrades. The Meteor could run for hours at full RPM without overheating, something rare for tank engines of that time. And it was precisely because of such an engine that British vehicles often surprised Allied crews with their liveliness on the battlefield. There were cases where a Meteor-powered tank covered hundreds of miles without serious breakdowns, while competitors had to stop frequently for repairs. That gave crews a psychological advantage, knowing their machine would not fail in the most critical moment. Britain installed an aircraft engine in its tanks not for novelty, but because war demanded unconventional solutions. The idea worked so well that the concept did not disappear with the end of World War II. The principle of high power and maximum mobility became a new standard for post-war fighting vehicles in many countries. Many solutions that seem ordinary in modern tank design today trace their roots back to those British experiments. And when you look at the newest armored vehicles, it is hard not to notice that an idea once considered crazy had actually been decades ahead of its time.